These are my fiance's pajama pants, oh no! Glitter. Alright, time to get back to work. Hey guys, it's Cheyenne. Welcome back to my channel. So, the last couple of videos have been me talking about sort of longer term plans and stuff that's not as immediate, but now it's time to get back to work on Patreon photo set cosplays and the things that I normally do over the course of the year. So, as I'm recording this, it is January. February is going to be here before you know it, and for those of you who are not necessarily big followers of cosplay, February is what is usually called 28 Days of Black Cosplay. It is a month where all cosplayers try to kind of celebrate Black cosplayers because, let's be honest, we don't always get the appreciation that we deserve. Not just me, there are so many talented Black cosplayers who you should be following and you've probably never heard of, right? And because February is Black History Month, the cosplay community likes to use that month to celebrate Black cosplayers as well. So every year for 28 Days of Black Cosplay, for the last couple of years, I have always tried to do a costume for February that is celebrating a Black character or celebrating my Black heritage or making me feel really like proud and happy to be Black, basically. That's my goal with the costumes that I do for February. Last year I did Classic Storm, who is a character who I have loved for years but avoided doing, specifically because if you are a Black woman and you cosplay, that is the only person anyone will ever recommend for you to do, and it gets really annoying and really old really fast. So I held off on doing her out of spite for a very long time, but I got to a point where I kind of was like, you know what, I've always wanted to cosplay her, and me not doing it because other people want me to is kind of punishing myself. So I did her, and in the course of that year I made 2 other Storm cosplays. It was like a Damn Head Burst. I did Amalgam Wonder Woman Storm from the 90s, and I did Punk Storm, who I was really, really proud of. And I was trying to think about what I might want to do for 28 Days of Black Cosplay this year, and I was going through my just folder of all the crap that I wanted to cosplay forever, and Storm's wedding gown came up, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. Now, full disclosure, I don't necessarily love Storm and T'Challa together, because at the time that they got together in the comics, they had like 3 interactions, and I found that very weird and tokenistic, and I didn't like it. I have kind of come around on them. They are not my favorite Storm ship. I am a Thororo girl personally, but that's just me. But I thought that the wedding issue was really beautiful, and I think that Storm's gown was absolutely gorgeous, and it's something that I've wanted to take on for a while. I've been collecting beads and stuff to make her over the course of several years, and I was like, you know what, it's just time. I'm gonna make it. It's time. I'm gonna do it. So, Storm's dress for the wedding issue was designed by Sean Dudley. I think that it is absolutely beautiful. I think that the mixture of textures and stuff in it is really pretty, so I wanted to recreate that. So let's go over to the table and talk about what materials I'm using and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's talk about patterns and materials and all that kind of stuff. So I was looking at the dress, and it's a wrap dress that kind of opens up in the front, and it has straps and then these beautiful off-the-shoulder bits. And I was actually looking at patterns for something else entirely in Joann's and came across McCall's M7745, and I was like, wait, this would be a perfect space pattern for Storm's wedding gown, because it's wrapped, it opens up in the front, it has the shoulder bits. Now this one has like a flounce on it, but I'm basically just going to take the guide for this and use this to make sure that all my strands of beads kind of hang the way that I want. And it's a pretty simple pattern, simple wrap dress, and then I'm going to do the green part of the bodice as a corset over top, because I couldn't resist making it into a corset. It's me. In terms of the body fabric, again, I was in Joann's for something else entirely, and I came across this absolutely gorgeous silvery kind of lurexy lame. I don't even remember what kind of fabric this is now. It was really pretty, and I liked that it was kind of an off-white, but in some lights it has a little bit of a gold to it. I think this is going to photograph really, really beautifully. It's light, it's a stretch, so it'll be nice and forgiving, and I just think it's going to be pretty. I'm really excited for this. And for the corset, I wanted to try to find something that had a little bit of a texture to it, because there are beads on the corset part of her bodice, but it's not all beaded, and I didn't want to just do a solid fabric. So what I ended up finding, so this is also from Joann's. Joann's, you should really sponsor me. You should hook me up, I'm just saying. This is from the Yaya costume collection. I got a yard of this, which should be plenty for what I need to do with it. And it is this beautiful kind of, it's like a faux snake skin or alligator skin or something. And it's got a really beautiful color shift, and it just, when light hits it, sometimes it looks green, sometimes it looks blue, sometimes it has kind of these gold flecks. So I think this, with a lot of beads against it, will give this a lot of texture and a lot of character, which I'm really excited about. I have had beads for this costume for years. I just kind of slowly gathered up different kinds of beads in sort of greens and browns and things that kind of felt sort of African to me. I think I have more than this, actually, I think. But these are going to be the main ones. I also have some really pretty kind of rosy ones that are going to be those big center beads on the corset. But that's what I've got. I've got pretty much all the materials. I haven't decided if I'm going to use some of these to try to make her necklace or what I'm going to do with that yet. Right now my main focus is to get this together, because if I have to tweak the necklace, I can tweak the necklace. It's not a huge deal, and I'm not as worried about the crown. I can probably bang the crown out of foam really quick towards the end there. So at this point, my main focus in the next couple of days is to get the dress in one piece, get the corset at least built, so then I can work on the beadwork over the next like the next week, and then I can worry about the accessories and stuff after that. That's my plan right now. So I am gonna get this fabric ready to cut, and I'll see you later. So at this point, I just got everything pinned so that I could make sure that I had enough fabric. I always feel like I have enough fabric, and I'm usually wrong. And I wanted to get all the bodice pieces finished first, because then if I had any extra, I wanted to make the skirt a tiny bit longer, just so I could maybe add a little bit of a train to it. I didn't end up lucking out in that way, but that was kind of the goal for this. So I got all the bodice pieces pinned, and then I realized that I was going to have to change the way that I folded the fabric to get the skirt pieces to fit properly. I got all of the bodice pieces pinned, cut those off, put them to the side, and then I got all of my skirt pieces pinned. I like to try to get everything pinned before I cut anything out, but if I know that I have all my bodice pieces on one piece of fabric and then I need to change it to get all my skirt pieces on another piece of fabric, that kind of makes sense to my brain, right? And the nice thing about this is, because this was fabric from Joann's, I actually live around the corner from a Joann's, so worst case scenario, if I realized that I had gotten the yardage wrong, I just have to make another trip. It's not the end of the world. Once I had all my pattern pieces cut out, I decided to start with the bodice. Bodices are usually where, if I'm going to make any fit tweaks, I need to make them, just because I'm a little top heavy as a person, and I like to work on bodices first. So I got my darts put into the bodice pieces for the fronts so that I could get those kind of set, and then I decided that I was going to serge all of the edges for this costume. So I took all those pieces and took them over to the serger. I should have pressed those darts out, but I was kind of on a mission, didn't think about it. It ended up working out okay in the end. But just so you know, I should have pressed those darts out. But I just went over the edges of all of these pieces just so that I could make sure that nothing frayed. I had a feeling this fabric might fray if I didn't finish it off properly. So I just wanted to make sure that everything was nice and clean. Okay, so I've got the bodice in one piece. I just have the straps pinned on for now. I initially was going to replace these straps with just beads, but I noticed that it looks like she does have two sets of straps on there. So she has the one that's kind of the dress strap, and then she has a beaded strap through there, and then the two or three kind of loop guys. So I'm going to try to thread those so I can really get all of those placed and make sure everything is going to look the way I want before I sew the straps down and finish off all the edges. So to string all of my beads, I have some leather craft lace from Joann's. I also ended up buying more beads because I got paranoid that I didn't have enough. So I have the pattern piece that was the flounce that I was going to use. I thought it was going to have like a strap, but it doesn't. But I figured out which part is supposed to go around the arm, and it's this. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to kind of roughly figure out how long that needs to be. I'm going to cut a test piece. This is going to take a little while, so I actually think that I'm going to go chill on the couch, watch Buffy, and play with beads, and hopefully I can get this done tonight. So that's what I did. I got comfy on the couch, I put some Buffy the Vampire Slayer on because that's my comfort show, and I got to work on getting all the beads done. This took a long time, but it was pretty chill. I just kind of tried to do a pretty irregular mix of beads. I tried not to do too many of one color at once. I tried to just kind of get like short ones, big ones, long ones, brightly colored ones, brown ones. I wanted to make the mixture feel kind of irregular just because I like the way that looks better. And it took me pretty much all night, but I think it was worth it. Okay, so we've got all of the beads done, all of the strands. They're not all exactly the same length, but I kind of like that, because I want them to kind of cascade out. So like when these are on my arms, it's going to be very that. And I think the lengths are good. I think the mix of the colors is coming out really pretty. I'm really excited. So this pattern calls for a lining. I'm not doing that. I could, but I honestly don't feel like this necessarily needs a lining. And also, I just don't really feel like it. So what I think we're going to do instead is we're going to do a binding edge just to keep those edges nice and clean. And then that's also going to enclose all of these bead strands, so they'll all be sewn into the top. I think that's the way that we're going to do this. Yeah. And I have some silver binding already ready, so I can just use that, throw this all together. That's the plan, I think. Yeah. So I did this the same way that you normally would do double-sided bias tape. I started by sewing along the open edge of the bias tape the whole way through. The only real difference in the way that I did this versus how I would normally do this is that when I hit the point that the beads needed to get sewn in at, I left the beads in the line of sewing so that those would get sewn into what was going to get folded up, if that makes any sense. I basically just kind of like left them in the sewing machine's path. Then, once it was all sewn up, I folded those edges back over so that the binding was closed up and sewed over that with that same bit of the beads kind of sewn in so that that way the beads are just part of the bodice top and they just kind of stay in there. They're not going to move around or shift at all. Okay. So it's in one piece, it's wearable. I find it really funny because without the corset, I feel like I just look like Daenerys with some like African bits. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, Dani was a lip queen. I don't have the right bra on right now. I'm going to be wearing this same bra but with regular bra straps and in tan, so it won't be quite as noticeable, but the shape is working, the colors are coming together really nicely. I really like how this is coming together, but I think that's pretty good for a day's work. I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so it's day 2 or 3. Day 2 or 3 of the storm build. The dress is all in one piece. Everything on the dress is exactly the way that I want it with the exception of the hem. I'm still gonna wait to do because I don't know what shoes I'm wearing yet. I have my fabric for the waspy all set to go, so we're gonna head over to the table and get started on that. Okay, waspy time. So I am using a pattern from Corsets by Caroline on Etsy. It's the same pattern brand that I'm using for my Tiana base. I figured, oh, maybe I'll use a pattern by them for something a little less intense as practice. And they had a pattern that was perfect for what I wanted to do. I am tracing out my structure layer, so I am using a cotton canvas duck, and then I'm going to be flatlining the fashion fabric with a second layer of that, and then I will have a lining of duck, and then the outer fabric will be duck, which isn't the strongest thing in the world. If I was making like a real shaper corset, I would use coutil, but this is more of a fashion element than anything. I'm not expecting it to cinch my waist in super tight, and the reason that I am tracing these pieces on instead of pinning them is because this pattern did not come with seam allowance. So I'm tracing all those pieces on so that then I can cut them out with a little bit of seam allowance added. You can't really tell from the way that I'm doing this, but I was able to add that seam allowance in while I was tracing it out. And then I got those pieces cut out. Because duck is so thick, I cut out all of the first layer, and then I repeated this process and traced and cut out the exact same thing for the second layer. And then I just repeated the process with the snakeskin layer that is going to be the top. For these I pinned it. It just was simpler for me, and I kind of cut all the pieces loose and then shaved off everything but the seam allowance once they were kind of loose. It's just easier for me that way. Once I had everything cut, I flatlined my fashion layer onto one of the layers of duck. I basically just laid them over top and seam them together. That way I can treat them like one piece as I'm putting the corset together. And in case you want to know what I'm watching on my phone, it's a video by Be Kind Rewind. I love them. Their videos are amazing. Now for the weird part. So Storm's bodice has a little tiny U shape in the front. Like, I think it's just supposed to be a very deep V. And I was trying to figure out a way to approximate that. So what I did is I took a small piece of tan fabric and I sewed on just a little tiny loop of fabric that can kind of give that same illusion. Then I trimmed that with the same gold binding that I'm planning to use on the rest of the corset once it's put together. That way it will kind of give the illusion that there is a little dip in the corset in the front. It's just easier to do that at this stage while this piece is flat. Next, it was time to start putting my corset pieces together. So the way that I do this is a little bit unorthodox. What I do is I will take the inner and outer sides of a piece and sew them to the piece before that at the same time. So it's kind of like a sandwich of like outer front, inner, if that makes any sense. And the reason I do it this way is because then you can take your pieces, fold them back out the way they're supposed to be, and then just sew along them, and then you have your boning channels already made, right? You have your pieces attached, and then you have your boning channels done in 2 seams. It's really, really simple, and I have always found it really easy to do it this way, and it's just the way that I like to do it, especially for corsets that aren't super complex like this. If I was doing like Victorian stays, this probably wouldn't work, but for something like this that's pretty simple, this is the way that I like to do it. And you see I'm just going down a little bit past where that seam is, and then that is going to be my boning channel. And I just repeat that for all of my pieces. So because this is a waspy and because I'm not necessarily using it to tight lace, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of structure. I'm going to be going the budget route for this instead of doing steel bones like I would if I was trying to do a real like shaping foundation garment. I'm going to be using zip ties. So this is something that I've seen a lot of people do in the sort of historical costuming community. They are really great for stays. Now again, technically, because this is waspy, if I was making this to actually shape, these would probably not quite be strong enough, but I'm not planning to take this and try to make myself super snatched. I just wanted to give a little bit of shape, and I want to play around with them a little bit. They're plastic. I've been told that they're really similar sort of texture or consistency to whalebone, and they're cheap. So if this works and this is a viable like thing for me to use, I'm very excited. So I'm gonna cut all my lengths, put them in the channels, and then do the binding, and then the corset will basically be done. I'm pretty excited. So first off, these are very easy to cut through, so that's been nice. And right now I'm not doing my full measurements. I'm kind of eyeballing, looking at the boning channels, sort of how long these are gonna need to be, because then I'm gonna go back in and trim them. But these are so long that I just kind of want to have these be, workable lengths for me to really go in and fix the edges and get them really ready, but I just want to get everything kind of in easy to grab sizes right now. That's the plan. So I got all my bones cut and inserted, and I guess I'm dumb and forgot to record it, but just know that there are bones in this. So now I am putting my binding on. So the same way that I was doing binding on the top of the bodice, I always like to attach the bottom binding first. I don't know why, it's just a thing that I like to do, the way that I like to do it. So I like to get the bottom binding all attached and folded over, and then if I realize that there are any discrepancies in the lengths of my bones, I can kind of pull them out from the top, tweak them, and put them back in, because I 100% in the past have cut bones way too long and then tried to sew them in and things were wonky, and then I have to take it apart, and I don't like to do it, so I like to do the bottom, pull all the bones out, double check the lengths, put them back, and then do the top. And just like before, I am just closing that binding up by folding it under and sewing it back over, and that gives that really nice finished look. I really love the look of gold bias binding in particular. I don't know why, I just feel like it looks fancy. It probably doesn't to anybody but me, but it felt like it made sense for this costume, so I decided to go with the gold. Once all my binding was attached, it was time to go in and mark where the lacing holes were going to be. For this, I just put them every 2 inches because this isn't something that I'm doing really intense lacing with, so that should be plenty just for me to be able to lace it on, put it up. Next up, I pulled out my grommet press to just kind of finish off all of those lacing holes. So I just put the top half on, put the bottom half on, and then press those in. I really like having a grommet press for this because I do not have the upper body strength to hammer grommets in, and I live in an apartment and it's always loud and I always feel weird. And a press is just really simple. I make enough corsets that it makes sense for me to have this as a tool. You don't necessarily need one. You can do this by hand. If you want a video on that, let me know. I could do that at some point in the future if you're into it. Okay, with the bodice, corset, waspy, whatever, I know I've called it multiple things in this video, put together and laced up. Guys, this is so cool looking. Like, can we talk about how cool this looks? And with the waspy on, I don't even think I really have to worry about the leg slit as much as I was, because I can just kind of pull the leg opening up a little more, and then you still get that kind of like pretty gather without me having to cut any fabric out. So I'm just gonna hem that really fast and figure out what shoes I'm wearing. And then this needs some beadwork. I'm making a couple more necklaces and the tiara, and then that's gonna be it. You guys, I'm in the home stretch of this. Can we, like, I'm sorry, this looks fucking cool. This looks so cool, you guys. You can't tell me anything right now. I look so freaking cool. Oh my god. This looks so cool. Okay. Bedtime. And then tomorrow, you're next. Okay, home stretch. Initially, I was going to do a ton of beading on this, but the more I looked at it, the more that it felt like the fabric was so beautiful, I didn't want to do a lot to it. So I decided that I was just going to do these opals down the center because that's the main big detail in pretty much every illustration of this dress. So I am just throwing those on with a little bit of E6000 glue. Trying to get them in a completely straight line was surprisingly challenging for me for some reason. I don't know why, but it was such a struggle. But then I just got all those set, and then I was able to let those kind of cure overnight. And then all that was left to do was the tiara. So I knew I was going to put this on a headband, so I just took a base plastic headband and kind of roughed out the look of what I wanted the crown to look like based off of the shape that she has in the comic. I did tweak it a little bit because I wanted to use one of the same fire opals that I put on the corset, and those are a little bit smaller than that big giant gem she has in the center, but I got kind of the same shape, so that's really all that matters. And I did that out of a little scrap piece of EVA foam. Got that cut out, and then I decided to cover that with some scrap gold fabric that I had laying around. So I traced that out a little bit bigger just so that I have space to kind of fold over, and I did 2 sides of that so that I can cover the front and the back, because obviously I'm mostly going to be standing to the front, but if we get a picture where I'm looking at the back and then you just see black foam, that's not cute. So I want to avoid that if I can. Since this isn't a piece that's going to be under a lot of stress, I knew I could do this real quick and dirty, so I just attached it with some hot glue, attached it on the front there, and then I was able to go in and go over those edges as well. I'm not really that worried about the texture that that hot glue underneath is going to have because I'm going to be putting a bunch of gems and beads on the front, so it's not going to matter anyway. Trim that down, let's glue those edges down, and then I did the same thing just to attach that back piece, just so it would be one kind of nice covered gold piece shape guy thing. And then my camera died partway through this process, so I don't have footage of the rest of it, but I got the front covered, I got the back covered, and then I just hot glued a bunch of the gems to the front and attached that to my headband that I knew I was gonna wear, and that's the finished result. I'm really pleased with it. I think it came out pretty. Then at that point, all we had to do was get it shot. So my friend Stefan, who is the Black Panther I normally do Shuri with, was nice enough to come and be my Ken doll for this shoot. My fiance shot us. It was very weird and awkward, but it came out really, really special, and I'm really, really happy with how everything came together. The location was perfect, the time of day was perfect, the sun was perfect, the lighting was perfect, and everything just really came together, really special, really beautiful. I'm super pleased with how this costume came out and with how this shoot came together. It is probably one of my favorite things I've ever made, if I'm being completely honest. I am so pleased and proud and happy of this. The full photo set is going to be dropping on my Patreon, I believe on the 12th of February. So if you want to support me, that's how you can do that. If you want, you don't have to. And in the meantime, if you like this video, please like. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments. Until next time, remember, I am so, so proud of you. Make costumes, anger racists, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.